Wedding shop workers, what are your worst Bridezilla stories? I worked as a wedding planner and coordinator, and one bride stands out to me because she was so inconsistent with all the vendors. She was a complete sweetheart to me during the planning phase, and I never saw any of the crazy until the day of the wedding. It was honestly like a Jekyll/Hyde moment. She wanted a big wedding, around 300 people, and spent a lot of money on the venue and food and wanted the best for everything. No complaints about paying for it either, never asked for discounts or anything like that. And since she wanted the best and seemed to have a really large budget, I referred her to a popular baker for the cake. I let her handle the logistics for the cake since I've worked with this baker before and never had any problems. I figured they would do the standard cake tasting, pick a design with the baker, and I would see a gorgeous masterpiece on the day of the wedding. Well, that didn't really work out. For some reason she didn't want to tell the baker that it was for a wedding. I'm guessing she read that you can save money by ordering a regular cake because some vendors will automatically add an extra charge if it's for a wedding. By the way, this is true to some extent, but the extra charge truly is there for a reason. Whenever something is for a wedding, the vendor puts in much more care, stresses about the timing, execution, etc. way more than usual, and oftentimes will go all out and use premium materials or add upgrades. Not all of us are just adding extra charges for no reason. Anyways, she decided she didn't want to pay for a wedding cake, so she told the baker it was for a birthday party. The baker asked how many people the cake would need to serve, and she said around 50. She also didn't want to pay the delivery fee, so she had her sister pick up the cake on the morning of the wedding and bring it to the event. At this point, it's important to mention that we live in Texas and this is a summer wedding. By the time the cake got to the venue, about 6 hours after it was picked up from the bakery, it didn't look all that great anymore. Some of the decorations had melted, the cake got a little banged up in the car ride, and there was icing on the inside of the box. The entire cake was sagging on one side. It was also way too small for a wedding of her size. I saw it and it looked like a complete disaster. But at this point we're about an hour away from the start of the wedding and there's no possible way to fix this. The bride comes into the reception room with her makeup all done and sees the cake and completely flips out. Screaming, crying, throwing things, collapsing on the floor. Complete meltdown. Threatens to cancel the whole wedding if we can't fix it. We try to calm her down as much as we can and grab the makeup artist before she leaves and ask if she can help fix the bride's makeup, which is a mess now. The bride sees herself in the mirror and has another meltdown because she ruined her hair and makeup and now wants to have the whole thing redone. After she gets everything done to perfection again, we're about an hour behind schedule. I let the guests come inside the reception room to wait because it seemed cruel to force everyone to sit outside in 100-degree heat, but when she saw that everyone was inside she had another meltdown. She spent the entire wedding sulking with a scowl on her face, and refused to take any pictures with people. Her new husband kept coming over to hug her and try to cheer her up, and she would either yell at him or give him the silent treatment. Most of the guests left very early because the atmosphere felt so uncomfortable. So pretty much a waste of the $200,000 budget for a lavish wedding, all because she wanted to save a couple $100 on the cake. I once worked in a bakery and we had this bride freak out that her cake wasn't right and proceeded to smash it to bits with her fist. She smashed the wrong cake. Like WTF. Anyways, the cops allowed her to wash her hands before placing her in handcuffs. I felt bad for the future husband and the couple that ordered said cake. People are cray-cray. Florist. We had a bride and her mother show up at 9 a.m. They wanted to order a bridal bouquet, a mother of the bride catalia orchid corsage, a boutonniere for the groom, and 6 smaller ones for the groomsmen. The wedding was scheduled for noon. Yep, 3 hours from then, and they wanted them ready by the time they were done with their makeup appointment at the beauty parlor a few doors down. The bride was flipping through the FTD sample book and pointing out the style and flowers she wanted. Think garden roses with long sweeping trails of stephanotis and variegated ivy, all 3 of which would require at least a week's advanced order with our suppliers. She was absolutely gobsmacked that we didn't carry extremely expensive and highly perishable flowers at all times. Same with the Catalea orchid for the mom's corsage. My boss told them that since they didn't place an order beforehand they would be limited to what we had in stock, and simple styles that could be assembled quickly. The bride and her mom kept pointing at the book and arguing that we should have those specific flowers in stock. My boss eventually took the book off the desk and tossed it behind the counter. The bride vacillated between tears and petulant whining that we were going to ruin her big day. My boss, who had a bone-deep loathing for brides in general, told her she had ruined her own day by not ordering her flowers before her actual wedding day. The mom tried chewing out my boss for her lack of customer service skills. My boss told her that she was welcome to go down the street to Vaughn's and ask their flower department to make their order with whatever they had in stock. The mom said she'd do just that, and reassured the bride that she'd have her flowers done by the time her appointment was over. Both women stormed out. I figured that was that, but my boss told me and the other girl to start on 6 simple dendrobium orchid bouts. Meanwhile she threw together a ribbon-wrapped bridal bouquet with some white roses that were nearly past their prime and some more dendros. Sure enough, 20 minutes later the mob slunk back in and meekly asked if we were still able to assemble what they needed. We did. We also charged her a very large bitch tax rush fee. Wedding band member here. Had a bride flip her shit at me and my bandmates because our instruments weren't white or salmon colored to fit in with the decorations, and she was saying we would ruin the photographs. Even though I was playing during the reception and all the photos were already taken. A sunburst jazz bass, blue Stratocaster and a red drum set aren't going to ruin your pictures, darling. I worked at David's Bridal and I have to say that I never really had a terrible bride. It was always the moms, grandmas, sisters and friends that were terrible. Either they hated what the bride would pick out for them to wear or they would hate what she was picking out for herself to wear. At DB we have kinda strict appointment guidelines when it comes to time, and a lot of brides that would bring entourages wouldn't find a dress because everyone would bombard her with their opinions and overwhelm them. The worst thing I've ever witnessed was when a bride that always struggled with her weight came in. She was overweight and had been working extremely hard on it over the last year. It was a slower day and we all loved her story and wanted to make that day special, so we all decided to help. She finally found a dress that she loved and she started crying along with most of us. Then she looked at her mom and asked for her opinion, and her mom looked at her and said, "You look fat in it." We all stood there in silence and the bride lost her happiness. She asked to be assisted in taking it off and they left. It was one of the saddest days that I had experienced there. My mom and I saw a great Bridezilla freakout while shopping for my wedding dress a few years back. We were in a small, local shop when another mother-daughter duo came in. The attendant who had been helping us went up to greet them. The mother said they were here to pick up her daughter's dress, so the attendant looks her name up in the computer, frowns, and says, "Ma'am, you never bought the dress." "What are you talking about?" The attendant shows the lady the notes on her computer screen. "You said you wanted to think about it, and asked if we could hold the dress. We held it for 2 weeks, but when we didn't hear back from you, we assumed you didn't want it." "Well, we want it now." "It's been over 8 months, the attendant explained. "We sold the dress a long time ago. But I can order you another one, and have it expedited here in a few weeks." And like a Mount St. Helens of entitlement, the eruption began. "This is unacceptable." The mother shrieked. "We have her alterations scheduled in 2 hours. The wedding is a week away. I can't believe you sold her dress." The bride, meanwhile, is slumped against the desk and sobbing like someone killed her dog. My mom and I are just open-mouthed staring at this point. The attendant was trying to be diplomatic, but is clearly as baffled as we are. "Ma'am, we had no way to know you wanted it. You never called. You never put down a deposit. The dress isn't yours until you pay for it." After some more screaming from the mother and wailing from the bride, they left. The shop attendant came back over to us and I asked her, "Does that kind of thing happen a lot?" The poor lady just deflated. "All the time." It baffles me to this day. How do you schedule alterations on a dress that you never purchased? Why would you wait until a week before the wedding to pick up your dress? How do you make it to adulthood without knowing how basic buying and selling transactions work? TL, doctor, turns out dress shops can't read your mind, and you need to actually pay money for a wedding dress before it is yours. Go figure. Oh, I work as a wedding server, awesome job, I love it. As soon as someone says Bridezilla, this one story where the manager of our hotel had to shut down the wedding halfway through comes to mind. This was the Bridezilla of all the Bridezillas I've ever seen. There were a lot of little things leading up that were casual Bridezilla until the wedding took a sharp turn. At one point she accused the wedding server staff of stealing her veil. Then the manager found it in her room and also showed her the card swipes to her room proving only she had been in the room that day. About 20 minutes later she was screaming at some poor front desk employee accusing her of stealing her wedding boots. Manager intervened and after a long talk the photographer told him he had a photo of the boots on the staircase of the church, and asked if she had worn them since. When she said no, she told our place it was our job to have picked them up and made sure she had them. The church was not related to our place at all. Then shortly after she started opening the wedding gifts frantically inside the ballroom and screaming at anyone and everyone, guests included, saying someone stole her wedding certificate. After that, Our manager gathered the wedding staff and told us to take off our uniform jackets, empty them in front of him, then to clock out and go home. Which we all did. None of us stole anything, and we heard next day the maid of honor had the certificate, and after we left the wedding was shut down completely. Room left as is for the bride to come back to in the morning. Wedding coordinator here. I've found the moms are usually worse than the brides. I worked a wedding this past summer with a ridiculous momzilla. During the rehearsal, she handed me the box of decorations and said, "Don't you dare make this look tacky." On the day of the wedding, she arrived and came up to ask me where the wedding programs were. I told her there weren't any programs in any of the boxes, and she proceeded to bitch me out for losing them and then decided that I stole them. She also asked that we build a water station for the guests, but instructed that she didn't want the guests to have access to it until after the ceremony. It was 90 degrees that day and the ceremony was outside, so that did not go over well. And when the guests complained that they were thirsty and we weren't letting them go to the water station, she told them how horrible we were and made a big deal out of opening the water station early, like she was the hero. Thank God they only booked the venue for the ceremony, so she was only my problem for about an hour. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more. Oh, and don't spoil the endgame piece.